I entered my first game jam a couple weeks ago, and had 7 days to make a game from scratch with the theme Stronger together. We ended up making this really cool rhythm-based medieval game, and people seemed to like it. But I couldn't have done it all on my own. I paired up with Tutmo, a fellow game dev YouTuber who makes awesome videos. And so on day 1 of the jam, we hopped on a phone call and tried to figure out what kind of game we wanted to make. We went through a bunch of ideas and eventually settled on a game where you defend a castle by pressing keys at the right time to fend off enemies. We didn't really have everything worked out, but we liked the idea of knights and castles, and that was good enough, right? You could see in pretty early footage we basically had red cubes exiting from a black void and randomly going down one of 5 lanes. And then fast forward a few hours and we had more cubes. You'll have to imagine for now that the blue cube is a knight. But the idea was basically if you timed the key press at the right time, the knight would destroy the approaching red cube. Since some cubes would come down an empty lane, we made it so you can move a knight by holding its key in the left or right arrow to switch lanes. Even though this technically worked, it just didn't feel good from a gameplay perspective, and it was sluggish to move only one knight at a time. We were stuck on this for a bit, but Tutmo came to the rescue with the idea of clumping. Instead of just moving one knight at a time, you'd just press the left or right arrow key and it'd move all the knights in that direction. So come day 3 of the game jam, we were looking pretty good with the hottest medieval cube moving rhythm game in town. We even added a power meter, so if you destroyed enough enemies in a row, it'd fill up and by pressing space, you'd get another knight in the closest empty lane. Our gameplay was coming along nicely, but the game didn't look very medieval at this point, so I threw together a castle in Blender. I know it's not the best castle, but the game actually did end up looking really polished. You'll see soon. So our game idea was pretty much formed at this point. Time key presses with oncoming enemies to destroy them. Get enough in a row to fill a meter and gain a new knight. But if you miss, you'll lose the knight and eventually the game. By day 4, we replaced our faithful blue cubes with actual knights. Tutmo's wife Jenny is super at Blender and she modeled them. So you can probably tell her knights are a little better than my castle. I also threw together some grass textures and post-processing, and Tutmo added a cool explosion particle whenever you destroyed a red cube enemy. We soon added a real enemy model, based a bit off that ghost from Ghostbusters, and it went through a few color variations before we settled on something we liked. Tutmo also created some awesome original music for the game. One thing that had been bugging us was what would happen if you filled a power meter, but already had a knight in every lane. Since you couldn't add more knights, it'd have to be something special. We decided on something called an all-out attack. It's a special attack that destroys all enemies on the board and restores your health. And not to be too harsh on myself, but my castle was sort of bringing the game's quality down, so Jenny remade it. A couple times. By the last day of the game jam, we still had a decent amount of work left. Tutmo got to work making all the sound effects from scratch, and I added waves so that the enemies would speed up with each oncoming wave. I also built a way to unlock different stylish armors, with points you earned by playing the game. Finally, we added a tutorial, and at 2 AM with a few hours left until the deadline, we submitted the game to the jam. Our hard work seems to have paid off as the feedback we've received so far has been really great. You should definitely check out Tutmo's devlog about our experience on his channel. You can find it in the description along with a link to our game if you want to try it out for yourself. If you didn't dislike this video, consider subscribing. It's free. And like always, thanks so much for watching.